Welcome to our afternoon panel session, which had to be moved to this place directly after the lunch break. I welcome you. Maybe I say a very few words about myself. I'm working with a scale project. I'm mostly dealing with the context to contact with the COE, so that's also why I know HiDALGO, why I have been invited, I think. I'm in addition by education, but since long I've worked in different fields, doing European projects since a couple of years now. And I will ask my audience to introduce themselves because they know much better than I.
Okay, I'm Martin Laurent, I'm coordinator of the HiDALGO2. My research interest lies in scalability, co-design, and parallel processing, and mostly related with the efficient using of the new novelty HPC systems, including this hybrid architectures, HPC, AI, HPDA.
I'm the managing director of HLRS. So I don't own the building here, but sometimes I live here. And I'm the coordinator of the HLRS, Center of Excellence, the UCC, or UCC2, network of competence centers at the moment. So somehow everywhere and nowhere, a very good team which is, let's say, taking care of the daily life in the project, but I try to, let's say, stay in there and try to support with, let's say, common view on things, how to evolve with applications, with machines, with whatever we need to move forward.
So hi everyone, I'm Andreas Antinodorou. I'm an associate research scientist at the Cyprus Institute at the Computation Department. My research interests are basically focusing on the three different pillars of computational science, HPC, quantum computing, and AI and machine learning. I'm using HPC for simulations of so-called lattice QCD, lattice gauge theories. We calculate the masses of the hadrons, and at the same time I'm working for EuroCC2 as an industry scout, and I also represent the Cyprus Institute in European Open Science Cloud and EUDAT CDI. Hello, I'm Kostis Iliakis. I'm here today representing ICCS as a postdoctoral researcher at the Institute of Communications Computer Systems of the National University of Athens. My fields of interest include high-performance computing, distributed computing, parallel programming, and also development of novel GPU architectures. I've worked in the past in the acceleration and a conversion to high-performance computing, utilizing high-performance computing resources for codes for CFD and also for particle accelerators. That's all.
Yeah, thank you very much. The overarching topic of our panel this afternoon is how to bring these applications that are developed in the centers of excellence, for example, in HiDALGO. We have heard about that in the morning already, how they can bring closer to potential users, how they can make impact, how they can be organized and uptake of all these technologies. But before we go maybe into the painstaking details of that, maybe we touch more perhaps the glossy side of things. So what potentials do we see for European players in taking after all your nice codes, all your what are currently developed across many different fields? We have seen it out, but there are a lot of other COEs. What is the big picture you would paint? Could you start, Martin?
Yeah. Yeah, the HiDALGO have a big privilege to be rather the community COE. It means that, of course, we have oriented around the environmental environmental use cases. However, it means that we need also closely collaborate with the end users, like city halls, like local government, regional forestry. All these communities could be or are potentially interested in our results. How to make this uptake? Of course, it would be good to present ourselves from the good side. It means that first simulations for results should be presented to them to give them overall idea what we are, what we can offer, how we can prevent the losses, potential losses caused by the environmental phenomena. So I believe it in this way. Yeah. The another aspect is also to related with the encouraging other communities using our resources. HiDALGO2 is a little bit different, yeah, compared to the other COEs. We do not concentrate exclusively on the simulations. Of course, they are in the core. However, we are providing a lot of collateral services to run this simulation, to store data, to process pre and post-process simulations, incorporate AI, as well as having this advanced visualization we have presented based on the real engine, for example, from the wildfires. It means that we are providing a soft start, yeah, with the external users, so they don't need to, I don't know, study our simulation tool for the 6 months from the beginning. Rather, they can pick up some specific elements they are interested in from our offer, from our dashboard, define the workflow and run it and see what is the results. Yeah, so it could facilitate this learning process a lot. So I would see these two directions, these two paths in order to improve this uptake and encourage other communities. Yeah, this showing our results to the potential customers, policymakers, and involving users by providing easy-to-use software.
Okay, I think it's important that we distinguish, let's say, the user groups we're targeting. So one thing is obviously, or it's one user group, not one thing, is academia, which is quite familiar to what's happening there. Say, most of the times you know best what's happening in a project and activity, obviously if you're part of that, but still you have, let's say, publications, etc., which spread the word. Then you have, let's say, other user groups like the public administration. So for HiDALGO it's very important, but they're usually very reluctant to do something which is new. So very important to get interaction with them. And you have the industry. The industry wants to use things, but needs to understand it. In industry you have different areas. You have, let's say, small and medium enterprises, which cannot afford, let's say, to put a lot of money into trying to understand if they can do something with it or not. We have, let's say, the big players which probably have their own research units. It's a bit easier, but also not very easy. We have startups currently, which are still completely aliens for most of us from the community in terms of the request. So I think an important part is, and I think we have, and this is very important, Europe is extremely good in applications. But what we see currently is obviously that with the HPC joint undertaking, they tried to fill a gap in terms of the availability of resources. So now we are investing in resources, we're investing in HPC resources, we're investing in quantum computers, we're investing in AI factories, so the gigafactories, then let's see what comes next. We have to be realistic here. This is our let's say, door to the Europeanization. Why am I saying this? Because in many cases it's like we have a closed group, they're working on some code, etc. And again, they share the knowledge, they know what's possible, but we have to go further. So we have to think about how can such a code run on another system in the HPC environment, etc., which is not a trivial thing. If you're lucky, they have a similar architecture as where it was, let's say, developed. In the worst case, it needs to be ported to the whole thing. But at the same time, you need to provide successes. It's the same, end users are very important. So not saying, I worked on this problem, no, I worked on the solution, now the question is what's the problem. But really saying, okay, look, this is a realistic problem from like an industrial entity, or this is a use case from public administration, and they have a benefit of X, Y, Z, which by the way means also we have to change our language. With techie language, we never get to those people. Yeah. But let's say if we're really able to speak that language, let's say do some more, let's say, interaction with them, then they can really benefit from this, because then we establish a level where they're probably a bit more open just to try something, but we have the duty to make it as easy as possible for them to get a quick, let's say, understanding what the potential is for them, and to make them aware that it's worthwhile, let's say, investing time, probably some money in the interaction. Thank you.
So, yeah, actually, I'm a bit amazed, by what I've seen today here. I've got the whole work that has been done in COEs, and I think clearly the codes and the software, is quite, has been, let's say, has been converted in an application way, so that I think SMEs, for instance, and startups can use it easily. That's my understanding. That's actually, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was going to see here. And how things have evolved, and I think we are moving towards the right direction. I think we need to disseminate. By disseminating use cases, to different stakeholders, and these use cases need to be described in simple words. Words that can be understood by people that have nothing to do with let's say, science. I think we are on the right track in the sense that we have codes that run using a user interface. This is quite important. Another thing is good documentation. I'm pretty sure that exists as well. If it doesn't exist, this is something that can be improved. And of course, in order to get it closer to industry, maybe some improving interoperability could also improve the situation.
Yes, I totally agree with what the previous speakers have said. The only thing I have to add is that basically to make sure that we maximize the impact of HPC in Europe, we don't need to only focus on having the resources available, the compute resources available, but also on who gets to access those resources. And then for everybody to have access to those resources, we need intuitive tools that are user-friendly, so that we can reach as many users as possible, but also need commercially targeted resources for SMEs to be able to access, and not only focusing on universities that are typically the typical users of these HPC clusters that we currently have. So, yeah.
Thank you. So also, I wanted you to paint the bright picture. You already mentioned a couple of difficulties that have to be overcome. Maybe let's dig a bit deeper into the technical things. As we know, the devil is in the details. So, and we have seen tremendous progress of what you have achieved. What would be needed, maybe in terms of data frameworks or data acquisition, data management, validation of your frameworks, accessibility, and we have seen approaches to all of these topics already today. But what would be needed to really have a successful transfer of these advanced models into real tools which can really be used or taken up by various players? And as you mentioned, that there are certainly very different user groups. I mentioned big industry, smaller industry, public administration, which is a complete different beast, and then this both. What in your opinion would need to be added still? And maybe we start with Kostis.
Okay, sure. Yes, I will mention just one thing that comes to my mind, which is, if we could have standardized data formats, this would help a lot with the interoperability of the models. So one team can develop, in one country, one model that operates on some specific data set. But what if we want to apply the same data set easily on a completely different geographical region? how can we do that? So for that, we need to have a standardized data format, be able to communicate. And then another challenge is what happens if the monitoring systems that one country has or one region has are different with the monitoring system of another one. So maybe the measurements that they take are of different granularity, accuracy, level of detail. This is all things that need to be thought ahead of time if we want to maximize the impact of those applications and be able to not have them as isolated applications for specific regions, but be able to transfer them easily and effectively across EU.
So, so there are several points that I would like to make here. First of all is we need to, highly verify the data. So that the data are actually interoperable and reusable, and of course reproducible. Yeah. And at the same time, I think we can learn from work that has been done within other frameworks. Before, during the break, I discussed with a lot of people about European Open Science Clouds. For instance, the question of interoperability and what was this mentioned is something that has been addressed extensively by a lot of EOS projects that are actually focusing on this particular topic, on the standardization of data files, of creating metadata schemas, creating ontologies that can be used in industrial applications. So I think there are topics and aspects that can be learned by looking at what has been done in other different frameworks. And I think I have the feeling that it's we are talking about two different worlds, that they don't communicate. It would be good if these two worlds could communicate and understand and learn from each other.
Okay, the question is, do we really new technologies, or do we have the technologies, but they are very well hidden partially? So from my viewpoint, I think most of the things have been addressed somewhere. And the somewhere is usually, let's say, the problematic part, because as I said before, if I'm involved in something, I know that it exists, but in many cases it doesn't exist. So for me, I think what we rather would need is a certain phase of consolidation to really, let's say, bring things together and to strengthen the expertise. So, say each of the centers of excellence or the national competence centers should act as like a single point, and it should be independent. If you're the center of excellence now for global challenges or for engineering, you should be at least aware to whom point people to, or to how to get access to a common data space, or how do I get access to synthetic data that are available. Because again, also data is very, again, 5 projects, 5 different data approaches, 5 different data sets, might be very fruitful to bring them together, but if you don't know that they exist, then it's not so easy to do the whole thing. And I think this is the biggest challenge that we have currently, is really to bring those things together, which also needs a change of mindset, obviously. Because we all are a bit, let's say, I include myself, this community, we're all a bit like, we're there like, it's our treasure, and we don't want anybody else to touch our treasure because it's our treasure. But at the end, to be honest, if we manage to bring these things together and, let's say, see also probably, and I'm quite sure that applications of data sets, or let's say data sets which are probably A-rated, B-rated, C-rated because of the, let's say, how much data is in there, how valuable the data is. Or again, synthetic data generation. We talk about this in different projects, we talk about this, let's say, from things, because sometimes we don't get this data that we want. We're here in Germany trying to get data. First thing you get is the data protection officer. And you know you will never get data. Even the data which is publicly available, because it might be dangerous to take. Then I go to the Netherlands and I can get some data from hospitals, but no problem. Here at HLRS, if they want to have medical data, they're happy if somebody gets ill. Last time when I had to go to the MRT, they asked me, first of all, get well soon, but secondly, bring us, please, let's say, high-resolution pictures from the MRT. We need that. I said, yeah, I'm happy to help. Yeah, but this is So, but this is how it is in some areas. And let's say, and many activities usually start with where to get data from. We see this, the AI factories are now looking data labs. But ideally, we do get another data structure, another data structure. They need a metadata data structure, but then we have different metadata. So I think this is the important part. This is consolidation for one.
Yeah, we have one. Of course, data is the key. Yeah, the standardization that was stressed by colleagues is, of course, of utmost importance. I fully agree. But awareness of the existence is also very important. But the openness is also the aspect that must be stressed. I fully agree that people are treasuring data like a most precious ring, and basically this is true. This is very deeply, especially in respect of the public administration. Yeah, like I don't know, regional forestry. They have a lot of information about the plants in the region that could be very useful for the scientists. This is, I believe, not the subject for the anonymization because of the fragile aspect of this data. But it could be shared, but it is not. The same sometimes applies to the meteorological data, especially in the Poland. We have such a public institution which treasures their data, and we don't know why. Anyway, but it goes in a good direction. Yeah, it goes in the good direction because even the medical data, after anonymization, the Poland will be shared with the scientists. So it means that you can have an access to do the science with anonymized data. You can do your research without violating anyone's right. So the data is of course the key, but maybe I will also drive your attention to another aspect related with the licensing of the software, because a lot of software is developed under projects. Not all of them are have defined the licensing. Some of them are subject to the propriety, and so it should be, I believe, also free. Yeah, to give an access not only to the mind developer but also to another groups which could be potentially interested in this. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. To the audience, please be pre-warned that I like to open the discussion. After my next question to the audience, to have a bit more coverage and more questions. But we touched already on a couple of the topics I would like to address in my next question, which is there are not only technical hurdles, but also, let's say, more structural or educational barriers or regulatory barriers. What are the primary structural barriers of such, or maybe also educational barriers currently hinder or prevent SMEs or public administration from really adopting the solutions on the services which are being developed? Are there any specific blockers you have in mind? We already mentioned data availability. Are there specific blockers on the national level, or is it rather the European level? Because there is no common law in some cases, or no common ground where to base upon. Is it incompatible, or are just national solutions preferred by public institutions? What's your view on that?
So what barrier is obviously that we have to be prepared. Let's say that some, again, different target groups, for example, public administration, many of the data sets are usually obliged to stay in the country. So then we need to be able simply to have this data locally, somewhere in a trusted environment. For industry, this is as well usually very important that they know where the data is, that it doesn't, let's say, go around. Even, let's say, if it's Europe, it might be dangerous to leave it there. For scientists, sometimes I have the feeling they're more, let's say, relaxed with that. So these, let's say, but we have to take into account that there are legal obstacles for this. Text data of public administrations should not leave the country. Let's say other data sets are quite protected. Then we need to ensure, let's say, the data security is there, which means that we need ideally to have some ISO or whatever certified environment for that, which is, we have done this here, it's a lot of fun, obviously. Then the other part is educational. I think also here we have different requests. We are all very good in academic education. And public administrators, people, they need a complete different kind of input. And the same is for the industry. Now, industry can either, let's say, buy their own courses if they're big industry or something like this. But again, coming with this even enterprises. How many people are there which know how to use the shell? And if they're lucky, they have one person which knows really how to use that, and the other ones need to be educated. But ideally, obviously, we also give them the tools that, let's say, make their life easier. But also here they can say, yeah, good, we have 10 people in this SME, so 2 of them will now go for 3 weeks, 2 courses. This doesn't work. So we need different approaches, let's say different sets, probably with some certifications they have, if they have got this. So also for them, for their employment. So we need to ensure that they can learn while they are working, which means different approaches, blended learning, etc. And I think these are the programs which are not that mature yet, let's say, provided by us than the academic ones. I often have discussions with people from JU which say, oh no, again, a lot of money into academic courses. And of course, yes, I would like to put it in, but somehow they are right. We have to focus also on these other kind of courses which are different setup, need different, let's say, material, and probably sometimes also different people with the methodologies.
Yeah, maybe another blocker that should be worked to rise up is related with the commercialization. Yeah, we have different groups with different businesses, different users, different categories. Academics are, of course, are interested in doing the research, doing the academic work, but they don't have skills to commercialize. Yeah, to make this transition from the research to the industry. Industry, of course, are interested, but they are willing to get a product, yeah, which is ready to use with specified TRL, and basically it is understandable, yeah, because they have a limited amount of the budget used for the promoting products, and we need, in other words, we need someone in between, yeah, someone in between who could take the role of the promoting commercialization and understanding the user needs, because this is also the crucial. Sometimes academics are working in their bubbles, they are not confronting with the external world, so they are thinking that what they are doing is extremely useful, but they are not customized for that. Yeah, it is. I'm not talking about HiDALGO, because we have a different story, of course, because Christoph is looking at me with strange eyes. Anyway, this is not our story. As you have seen, our use cases are very needed and demanded on probably at the market as well. But there are many research work that would need those two. I mean, this help in the transition from the academic, from the research to the industry, and the second part is to get the feedback, yeah, in other way to better understand what really market needs, yeah, because we also had this discussion in the project, yeah, how we could make what we are doing more useful by the people. And the answer, one of the possible answer is, for example, for our use cases, to provide the ability to test alternative scenarios. Yeah. So what if? Yeah, because the users are always, sometimes or quite often interested in the situation. If, for example, for the urban building, if they would change technology for new buildings from A to B, what would be the benefit? What would be the cost? What if we don't apply this, or maybe we select a different way? What consequences? Yeah, we need to account at the end. Yeah, so this is not only to go the one path with the simulation. It is a better look around, yeah, in terms of the data, in terms of the potential results. That's why we have this ensemble scenarios where we are testing different things. And also, I already said that, but maybe it is worth to repeat to help the people, these decision makers, to analyze what industry results, what industry reports potential is in the and how to transfer it to the natural human language to let them understand it.
Yeah, I'll say a few things. I mean, regarding my experience, that I realized that focusing on SMEs, for instance, in a lot of cases, SMEs basically they lack of technical stuff, so that they can actually do the work. So again, simplifying things to them. By training, let's say, training them in a different mode. In a mode that is more understandable, and using, of course, tools that can be used easily. For instance, Shell was mentioned before. Definitely Shell should be out of question. There should be something more, more practical for industrial stakeholders, to use. Of course, there's also the question of accessing the machine, accessing HPCs. I think this, of course, it costs. In some cases, small startups, cannot afford it. And this could also be, kind of mitigated through the AI factories. There would be some time dedicated to this direction. And of course, there's also the question of, whether a company will trust you, to share or to store data in your data space. So this is another point of which is quite important. I think we need to, at least have some kind of security certification. There is obviously each country needs to develop, if not a national data policy. This will also help the situation. And yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so the only thing I have to add is, yes, previous speaker said, small companies cannot always afford an HPC specialist. And then what this means is that they're sometimes just excluded from playing the game of HPC. And this will create an imbalance favoring bigger players that they can easily afford to have these HPC specialists and, of course, access to HPC resources. And then what might happen is, one, they are excluded from this innovation. And another thing is that they might go to cloud providers. Most of those cloud providers are not EU-based. So what happens is, as a whole, we increase our dependence to non-EU countries by going to these huge cloud providers that make it easier to handle the resources. So this is another risk of losing competitiveness, losing talent that we need to keep in mind.
Thank you. At this point, I think there might be also a number of questions from the audience, or maybe comments. As you already showed done, and the application developers also certainly have their opinion.
Thank you. My personal experiences, let me share with you. Internally, the project work should start, in my opinion, with making an agreement, internal agreement within the consortium members, how to share the possible IP. And if we want to have really cooperations, couple simulations or whatever, that the first thing we should do is the IP agreement within the consortium. This is the first thing. The other thing, if we are running a European project, then everyone, the stakeholders, the industry, the cities, and everyone considers us that we will work for them for free. Everything for free. This is from my experience that we made application, a use case for a big European city, and They, from time to time, they requested more work from us. They had special file formats and so on. We put a lot of work into it, and we did it, and they were satisfied. And when at the end they requested something else, and we told them, okay, this is for some extra money, they were offended. They said that how do you think that you are a European project? And I explained slowly and calmly that okay, this was the project, and this is something much more than within the project, and they had to keep it in mind, and after 2 weeks they returned to us. So it was not straightforward for people in Europe that if they consider us for a Horizon project, then you have to work for free. And for this situation, it is very difficult to go for industrial problems, to solve at industrial basis. This is my experience. And I agree with you, because this, I have several external people in my group, and they say that it's very complicated, at least what we experienced in Hungary and at HPC. It's very complicated to use these computers, and they prefer going to Amazon for $2.
So actually, following on Zoltan, Amazon is going HPC, for example. Google also has some HPC capacities, not like what we have, but they are going in this direction. But we see also that centers, supercomputing centers in Europe, are going to the cloud. So, for example, if you go to Meluxi now, in France, the Alice Lecoq will have a cloud part accessible from the, using cloud-like APIs. So shouldn't we try also to find ways to smooth the path to HPC? What do you think about that? In my opinion, my experience is terrible. Awful. I won't talk about it because now we have solutions using containers. For us, it's a huge gain. But I would be very happy to know your perspective in this area. And another point regarding SMEs and the fact that it's very hard to bring people, who may not have the competences, for example in HPC, just out of the blue. How about plugging AI on top of our complicated systems? Because now you see, for example, you have Atlas going out. It changed completely things, the way we apprehend information. It's dangerous, but we need to learn about the use of this kind of system. But how about plugging this kind of system in order to help leverage complicated system, hide as much as possible the complexities, but also put securities in order to make sure that we don't do anything foolish. So how about that, in order to smooth also the way to advance technologies?
So what you just described is the first part, is the interesting part we were, I think, discussing since decades. Obviously, you have an issue, let's say, with containerization, etc. We have often think as soon as you're going into a really protected environment for industry, etc. Classical HPC machines, you open a certain, say, risk for the whole thing. Besides the fact that, let's say, sometimes there's more religious reasons why operation people don't want that. The interesting part is now speaking as someone who's running a big monster over there, but also having soon an AI factory. For the AI factory, it was always clear we need some cloud-like access there. Because we need to give people a look and feel from Amazon, whatever. That's clear. However, it's also, let's say, the different setup, etc. I think it started something now. Discussion about the AI factories go back to that. So now, from an accelerator viewpoint, I know that we are working since the beginning on a platform which is called Scales, which is not perfect, but simplifies the life by even giving a GUI-like access, drop things, let's say, starting the workflows, which is already a step forward, which is important, let's say, for the users which don't have a clue about, again, shells or scripts, etc. Yes, I mean, ideally we would need to, let's say, exchange on that and to see, let's say, does it need to be that platform automatically, but having some common approach, because again, we have the COEs from the Euro HPC, so we should not have, let's say, with 10 COEs, 10 different access mechanisms. Yeah? The access policies are the other part, by the way. Yeah, that's why I say for me, this is what I meant the consolidation phase. We all have done good things, but at a certain point in time, we need to somehow converge here, or I think people will get mad when they want to use something. And this is a good point also from you, because of I think in many cases, let's say, the move from a project to, let's say, some commercialized things needs to start also from the beginning on, by the way. I think in some of the projects I'm the most hated person, because I usually say people, when you do some services or when you work with the use cases, try to account for yourself what would be the cost of the service at this point in time. And then on the other way, you need to ask the end users, if it would have costed like this, what of these things would you have asked for if you paid for it? Because then we get also a feeling which are the services, which are the cost of that. And then we can go out. Obviously, we all have to work on sustainability, etc. If it's always possible 100%, I doubt. But I think we could make much more progress towards that when we all start with our mindset. And this is, let's say, I know scientists hate that completely. Management people love that. Economic people like it. Economic people are sometimes the most hated people in projects. But at the end, we need to look at these things as well. And I think we have to do this from the beginning on to work forward and to understand how was sustainability achieved at least to a certain amount. What would be this need for pricing, taxes, which we have to handle, accounting, and all the stuff like this, because this is something which becomes, let's say, much bigger. And we have the duty to do this because we're always running certain issues, the state aid, the Midwest, and all the other words I don't want to say, which are scary. But we have to be careful with that. So.
Very quickly, I fully agree with you, Bastian, fully. And so at the very beginning, not only internally within the project, but when we approach a stakeholder or worker, we have to make clear what is the situation. And also the European Commission should request this communicate so that not everything is free. They want to get this KPI or whatever what we do, but not just nice to have to do stuff for some company, but which has a real value. But for the real value that they have to pay, because this huge work is not covered by the small FTEs. Full-time equivalents are very low with the project to develop a professional product. Therefore, we need. So since the beginning, the Commission should communicate by the cause or wherever that something is for free, for demonstration, but the industrial work, the companies should pay. By the way, just to be clear, I always tell that Stuttgart is a very positive example because Porsche and other companies work for HLRS for decades. So this is a good example, and I always tell when they tell me that we cannot accept industrial work, large centers, I tell them go to Stuttgart. Because you do it, in my opinion, pretty well. Thank you.
Okay, there was a lot of input now from you, and all what you said is, I think, very nicely gets into my next and maybe already last question here. What kind of, and you mentioned that you think there is something in the middle would be needed between many types of users and the developer part, and I think we all agree that the Center of Excellence is maybe not the best suited entity to do real business with customers. So we have for instance, the National Competence Centers as potential middle layer. We have projects like Fortissimo who can bridge the gap for individual small companies. Would we also need more consulting companies taking up your solutions? Would we need more commercially oriented computing centers? What layers, what additional structures would you think would be useful or needed for us to try out?
Yeah, on the one hand, of course, the commercialization is encoded in the DNA of COEs. Yeah, we are encouraged to write down and sign a collaboration agreement. So it means that after the end of the project, whenever some customer will approach, theoretical customer, we have some frame, legal frame, to establish some entity, legal, like a company, for example, which could probably act to fulfill customers' requirement. Yeah, for example, someone will be interested in the urban pollution. We can assemble partners which are responsible for the models, which are responsible for the infrastructure, data management, and maybe visualization as well. And thanks to that, we are able to act. However, whenever it comes to putting money on the table, situation becomes tricky. Yeah, as we heard from the Zoltan experience from this collaboration with some European city, it is not very easy. Even okay, that's why we are thinking about these incentives which are simulations based on requirements for a specific city. Hopefully, when we provide it, something will be we break through this barrier, and people might see, okay, maybe this is worth to adjust and also justify our decisions. Yeah, because sometimes people are asking why some kind of restrictions, yeah, appear in the cities, yeah, related with the, I don't know, limitation of the age of the cars, yeah, that could enter into the specific zones in the municipalities. And of course, it is good to the local government to have such backup. That researchers, okay, did this thing, okay, and this is the reason which is supported by the science. Of course, to make it, we need to be ready for different exploitation thinking and mechanism. It is related with the business models that must be prepared. It is related with the specific analysis against these business aspects. Yeah, where we can make money, what is quite essential. Can we do this on the modeling, the providing what we have, maybe on some adaptation, maybe on providing some ready-to-use digestible results, yeah, to the customer. So there is a different levels of the services. We need to identify it. We need to identify key exploitation results. All these aspects should be considered. That's why we are collaborating in this group where with the other projects, including also Accelerate. We are working on the white papers on this commercialization aspects. Yeah, one white paper was already released. Now we are working on another one. This is the very slow, I must admit, but the way to convince, to show the researchers, scholars how to think about the products, yeah, which are the simulation tools. And all this together could potentially change the way of thinking, yeah, of what we are doing in the city.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's a difficult question, and I would speculate in some scenarios. For instance, something that it might, proven, useful is to identify, let's say, the necessary ingredients, to, let's say, make a product and make a series of products and a series of services attractable, okay, to industrial stakeholders. And this could be, throughout some kind of collaboration between different Euro HPC entities, for instance, NCCs and COEs, and maybe some other entity which has the ability to communicate better with industry, and taking into, in addition, we could also have AI factories, which is like the new big thing, that would, the main aim of it is to approach industrial stakeholders and SME startups, even large enterprises. And in addition, take advantage on, let's say, HPC, which could also be some, cloud-based HPC and containerized, let's say, approach, and sell some kind of bundles. Something that could include, all the ingredients that can be used throughout the life cycle of the project, and sell it to the company. So, some sense, in some way, we need to find a way to make our product, more attractive to the industrial stakeholders. That's all from me.
Yes, another possible ingredient that could make a product attractive for businesses and broader audience could be also something that we discussed about a lot in the previous panel, which is explainability if it's an AI model, or operational validation if it's a more typical numerical simulation, atmospheric simulation. So being able to give some sort of figure of merit of what is the uncertainty interval that surrounds predictive value comes out of a simulator can increase the trust to this value, and let more easily businesses adopt this tool, and as a consequence also sell it to their clients, so that can make it more commercially successful. So yeah, this is something that we also need to have in mind, that it's not only about providing a number, giving a prediction, but also giving an interval that surrounds this number that can help with argumenting whether this is something worth risk-taking or not for the policy and decision makers.
Quick one. I think from my viewpoint, we don't need yet another activity because we have a lot of activities here. We just have to see what the strength in the ones which we have. So more or less, if we want to, let's say, go the next step, we need first of all to collect our services, to understand what can they expect, then obviously ideally with some price tag or not price tag, so clear definition what is for free, what is, let's say, not for free, what can be done in front of a project, like testing, etc., but no production stuff, etc. We also can collect the use cases and the success stories which we have, because they are many times more helpful, especially for industry, to understand what has happened here, again, in their language. And I think we have done a good effort with that already together in the Castellan project, also with the HPC in Europe part around that. So from my viewpoint, the national competence sectors could be, let's say, relieve a bit the centers of excellence from doing all the stuff at the same time, bring this also on the European level to make it, let's say, like a common database of understanding. So one-stop shop, I hate this word, to be honest, because it was so many times what people expect that everybody thinks about, let's say, put in your American Express card, you buy something. So not that like that, but really, let's say, having a big knowledge base which is accessible, easy accessible, and then you can be, in ideal, you can just either broker it or you get supported there. And I think what maybe is a bit missing, let's say, is still so the action, and this is something what I would have liked to have more in the NCCs, to be honest. But sometimes you also get, let's say, some requirements through core texts, so what you can do and what you can't do. But what is very important is to go to the users. To go to the users, to events, let's say for industry, to go to events and showcase what you have. Go for, let's say, public administration, if they have this kind of, so in Germany we have this kind of city days where, let's say, the administrations of certain regions meet each other. These are the things I think which are a bit missing at the end, because a small project, or let's say as a project, you cannot, let's say, bring this all in, and you should not, let's say, present the COEX or the COEY, but present, let's say, the solutions which are offered and accessible to those which need solutions there. Because I think we have to also consider, we're doing a lot of services, but what you said in terms of the whole life cycle, this is a solution. And I think we also need to think about how to bring these services together to solutions, which I would say like the package, what you said, to get it there. And then it's, I think, easier for take-up.
Thank you. I think this was nice final words for our round, because we have already reached the end of our hour. So I would thank you all again, and thank the audience again for their input and their patience.